No, I already did the dishes. Just you start dinner, okay? Just, well, I don't know. Yeah, I told you to put the.
It's not my favorite. Where am I? This isn't my room. What is this? Oh no.
How nice to see you again. I figured I'd check in on your sanity.
And none of that could be done by simply SMS messaging me or tagging me or something? On second thought, I don't trust you with my contact info in the first place.
Doesn't matter, I have your number anyways.
Oh yeah, that's right. So what do you want from me?
So, how did you enjoy that slice of hell? Devil's Third.
Oh, I kinda liked it actually.
What?
I mean, yeah, it was unpolished and all, but all things considered, I thought it was one of my favorite games. I mean, I've done, well, now 2 videos on it because it was also in my Wii U top 10 list. Cheap plug if you wanted to go watch that. But my original video actually had a little bit of a roller coaster ride. You see, first it was one of my most popular growing videos, and then Nintendo muted it because of music rights, and I was mad at them for that, still kind of am really. But it was a really popular video and everyone liked it, and then I had to change the music, and then I had to start all over from scratch.
Quiet! This has nothing to do with you!
You abducted me.
You're supposed to be dead!
How? From playing a video game, or are you teleporting me here?
Well, sass me, will you? Well, you're never getting out of here, so there!
Well, clearly that doesn't seem very fair. You hold the cards here, I mean, come on.
I can welcome you to great avenues of agony and pure torment.
Oh, I already played Rascal.
Well, I do have one offering that I've been saving for a special occasion.
Well, if it's as bad as Devil's Third, then boy am I going to be in a lot of pain.
You like fighting games, right?
I'm not playing that. I'm not doing it. I'm not playing that. I'm not playing it. I don't get myself into this. Let's say that you are a popular chef at a fancy restaurant, and there's a dish that you've always wanted to cook, but you lost your job and the ingredients that you had for the same intended dish spoiled. There's a good chance that you would probably seek a new opportunity to make this with fresh ingredients. So, put this in the mind of if you wanted to develop a fighting game, it probably wouldn't be in the best interest to make it on hardware that's approaching 30 years old. This is what Unholy Knight decided to do with former staffers at SNK. We live in a day and age where you can stream Batman vs. Superman on your game consoles with ease. There's no feasible reason to make a game on aging tech that's nearly 3 decades old. Is that the minimum of Unholy Knight's problems? No. It isn't.
Now to start with, I did hear about the reviews prior to me purchasing this game, but I have to admit that the reason why I bought it was because the sheer novelty of owning a new Super Nintendo cartridge in 2017 would be rather neat. And I've always wanted a homebrew of sorts, and this game totally feels like a project that 2 guys made in their basement. I'm pretty sure that New Gaia had their best intentions, or maybe it was just something they wanted to scratch off their bucket list, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But why not focus on aiming to make Unholy Knight a successful independent fighting game in the modern era by developing it with more sophisticated technology?
But one of the things that I do like that I find relatively charming is how the box itself and the manuals are done in the same style of the Super Famicom games, rather than the Super Nintendo boxes here that we got in America.
Translation throughout the manual is a little rough. It's littered with a bunch of grammatical errors and broken English, like, when life gauge becomes lower, it will be increase. Kind of adds to the charm of the presentation, I think. A maid hunter who enters the old house as a maid, find out Darkness Clan and kills it. Nightmare is, according to her summary, a new dream evil, born in modern society and eats humans' desires.
Well, you tell me.
Now, the cartridge itself is very flimsy and cheap. The material doesn't feel particularly sturdy at all. I don't know if this is a common thing with Japanese cartridges, so if anybody else collects Famicom cartridges, you can feel free to let me know in the comments if you want to.
Speaking about graphics and animation, there really isn't much to look at, and there's something about it that's generally lacking. And that's disappointing, considering it was reported to have been a 32 megabyte card. Well, where's the other 16 megabytes? The animation doesn't look any more fluid or crisp than Street Fighter 2. The character sprites themselves look pretty decent, but rather small and lacking a significant amount of detail, like faces or whatnot. And then they start moving around, and I'll talk about it more in the control portion of this review, but there's a severe disconnect with the flow of your fighting game when characters are darting around this fast with little in the way of a genuine walk cycle.
Alright, I get it. It's kind of an effort to make the characters seem fast and give the illusion that the action is fast and fleeting, but it just comes off looking incredibly cheesy. I mean, especially when everybody moves roughly the same speed. You can air dash. You can air dash in this game. I mean, never mind the fact that double tapping forward while in midair barely makes you go faster than you already are, but hey, you can air dash. Take that, Blaze Blue.
The characters themselves. Let's say that this game did come out for its time period. You might have been able to get away with having 6 total playable characters on your game, providing that they all play unique and are very stimulating. That's not really the case here, and this comes off as rather inexcusable. New Gaia really rated the garbage bin of discarded Arc System Works character designs and said, well, we can do this too, how hard can it be? Blaze and Reinhardt look like they missed the casting call to be sole bad guy in Kai Kisuke, who doesn't look like he knows how to hold a keyblade. Seriously, that looks like one of the most impractical axes I've ever seen. It looks like it's more suitable for removing pizza pies out of the oven. The backgrounds aren't particularly interesting. They appear to be compressed static images with little to no life to them. Remember how Fighters Destiny and TMNT Tournament Fighters had well-animated and detailed backgrounds that brimmed with activity? Well, be prepared for Unholy Nights, Blue Rooftop, and Red Cathedral. Gray Door and Urine Tinted Street. I mean, a color palette is one thing, but you've got the Super Nintendo here. Give me some interesting hues to look at. The New Gaia probably didn't bear in mind that pushing the SNES's already aged hardware to its most maximum limitations wasn't a good idea. They kind of ran into Shaq Fu level shortcomings with the heavily detailed character models retaining so much information that there's a significant amount of lag between punches and kicks. It's really kind of frustrating. You can't really get a read on the combat itself. Everything feels so delayed.
Oh yeah, good luck catching any snippets of dialogue. The text in this game rolls faster than IndyCar tires.
There is a rumor between those living in the dark. A coffin of the strongest for reason to remove, he has placed the screw you! Darkness Clan, and for each fine! Overall, I give the visuals and animation a 4.5. That's probably a tad bit overly generous. The characters do look kind of decent, but as I said, once they're in motion, that kind of falls apart quickly, and the backgrounds are rather boring. And Nightmare herself is trying so hard to be Morrigan Ainslet, it's not even funny. Kronos? I'm pretty sure I've seen this guy in some late 80s vampire anime. Infernal Definer? I don't know. The sound and sound effects aren't bad. I'd say it's probably fairly standard, if not mildly above average fare, circa games of this era. If anything, I'd say the music composition is a tad bit muted and heavily filtered. There also appears to be a mild syncing delay in between blocking attacks and character grunts. It throws me off just a tad, but I think the action's happening so fast it sounds like that the audio has trouble keeping up. Characters don't particularly admit any signature attacks, it's merely just standard battle cries when they lose or... If you can kind of imagine Darkstalker style music emanating from the Super Nintendo, it would sound like this. Overall, I'd say it's probably a 5.5. It's pretty decent quality at best, if not a tad bit limited. Like, none of these tunes are particularly memorable, and I doubt that you'd be humming them. Maybe the opening title screen, because it sounds like a 15-second loop. Unholy Knight, however, suffers from sluggish, unresponsive, and ultimately very uninteresting controls. From the way the characters dart about the screen from moment one, it all feels incomplete, like nobody thought to put any effort into making any of the combatants feel diverse. You have light, medium, and strong normals, as well as a button that charges your synchro gauge. Charging your super meter is a feature that was rendered obsolete by King of Fighters 97. The medium and heavy attacks are horribly delayed, even the quicker light strike has a lousy startup to it. The combos have no real cohesion and hit confirms feel terribly off. I don't want to get overly technical, but Unholy Knight attempts to play like an Arc Sys fighter, but it lacks all of the depth and the polish that makes those games appealing. Again, a problem when you decide to use aged hardware to emulate a fast-paced, high-demand combat style. Special attacks work whenever they feel like it. I often found I can trap an opponent in the corner and just mash light attack since there's no pushback or punishment for mashing. There's very little variety in input commands. Select someone and try the try the standards. Quarter circle forward, DP motions, charges. Something's bound to happen with anyone. Now, the super attacks are all mostly combo rallies that all look exactly the same. Perhaps if it had ran a bit smoother, it could be more forgiving, but it's far too choppy, and if I didn't succumb to boredom, the frustration of unreliable mechanics is more than enough to click it off. It made even more agonizing is the story mode. It gives you limited credits. 3 tries, that's it. The only time you should ever get limited tries is when you run out of quarters or tokens at an arcade cabinet. Especially when it comes down to the final boss, Catatonia, however it's pronounced. He fires screen-filling projectiles that flicker in and out of existence because the game's lagging so horribly. On top of that, he's got a super move that restores his health. What is he, Gil? The controls get a 3 overall, and the fun factor is a 3.5, just barely. The only reason I'm even scoring that high is because there's some sick twisted amusement that can be derived from this, even if it is short-lived and fleeting. The controls barely function, and they're not very stimulating, and a fighting game, just like any other genre, relies on your ability to play them effectively. When all of the tools that you've implemented are either broken, don't work at all, or are just clumsily implemented, then there's no point in that. And because this roster is very limited with characters with very, very shallow appeal, that doesn't really help matters at all. And seriously, 3 continues. I should never have a finite number of continues in a fighting game that I'm playing at home.
I'm starting to understand why these guys are former SNK employees. They're not very good.
Get with it, it's 2017, or 1994, whatever time period this game wishes to exist in.
I think I've talked about Unholy Knight more than realistically necessary, probably more than it ever deserves to be. It's a 4 ass. It's a very below mediocre fighting game. Is it the worst fighter on the Super Nintendo? I'd wager it's slightly more playable than Shaq Fu, but it's hard to justify there being any fun out of this. In fact, a project like this really makes me worried for a game like Paprium, if that game even comes out. And if you have the technology, if you're Grace with the ability to make a fighting game, especially in this day and age, just go the route that something like Skullgirls does. Don't bother making, and I say this being a retro guy, don't bother making games, new games, on outdated hardware. there's no real point. The only thing that it does is that it exposes how old these things really are, and it makes a guy like me look like a total tool for buying it in the first place. So, is Unholy Night worth playing? I don't know, maybe if you've got $50 to burn and your friends are drunk or high, but I'd say bypass this one. It's a pretty lame fighting game, and there's way better on the console itself, and maybe even ones at the arcade that you can find. Alright, there. Am I out of purgatory now? Do you have anything else for me that you want me to review? Or do I have to go back into hell?
Oh, I was feeding my cats. What were you reviewing?
This is kind of why I hate shooting skits.
"虹をつかむ夢を見れば